Join us today on Beyond the Lair, where we have a conversation with Keith Henry, CEO of ITAC, Indigenous Tourism Association Canada. Keith gives us an incredible journey into the Indigenous tourism industry, who we are now, where the industry is going, and provides tools that we can use to move us to the next level. Hi, everybody. My name is Gina Jackson Montgomery. Welcome to Beyond the Lair. I am a proud member of the Seashell Nation, and my traditional name is Cetacia. It's my honor to introduce my co-host.
Hi there, I'm Dean Montgomery. I'm Métis from Cree descent from Saskatchewan.
We are so excited to have on episode 11 our good friend Keith Henry. Keith Henry is a Chief Executive Officer of Indigenous Tourism Association Canada, but has also had a huge history in the elevation of Indigenous people, of tourism opportunities, and is just a personal friend. And we're just so happy to have you today. Indigenous Tourism Association Canada is also a very strategic and anchor partner with the Bears Lair TV show. And we're going to get into that a little bit longer into the programming. Hello, Keith. Welcome to the program today.
Hi, Gina and Dean. It's great to be on your show today.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are? Everybody in the Indigenous world knows who Keith Henry is, but can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what your experience is with tourism and how you got started?
Yeah, I'm a proud Métis person. I'm born and raised, actually born in Thompson, Manitoba, but that's just because my dad worked in the mines at that time. But our family's from around Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, have Métis script right around Fish Creek / Batoche area, and some of tied very directly to the historic events of what happened in 1885 with my family directly from that area. So I feel quite a sense of pride and responsibility in how I work in my life to help support my own culture along with other Indigenous cultures as well. And so, yeah, I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan in 1995 with my education degree originally. I taught for a few years, and I wanted to see something different in my professional career, and I moved into administration. And from there, yeah, it just sort of catapulted me in around 2008. Well, 2005 originally with Aboriginal Tourism BCA. I started to become involved with what was known as the Blueprint Advisory Committee at that time for specifically one province in the country. And I just really loved it. I thought, wow, Aboriginal tourism, it was new to me at that time. It wasn't really my post-secondary training, but I could see the power of what it was trying to do to promote Indigenous cultures for all of our communities. And so I started this journey in 2005, really getting involved with Aboriginal tourism. And then I took on the role as CEO with it was then called Aboriginal Tourism BC, and I did that till about 2015. Fast forward to today, I was instrumental in helping rebuild the national body, the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. And so there's a number of years of just development. And so we officially relaunched the national body in 2015. And I started out as the founding chair, and I moved into the president CEO role shortly after. And so today I've continued to do that for the last basically 9 years. And so I've seen the journey of Indigenous tourism across every part of this country, and I really have enjoyed watching the power of it. And of course, I would also always go back and contribute to my own Métis community, and I help lead one of the Métis organizations in British Columbia, the BC Métis Federation. So I've always tried to balance my professional life with giving back to my own community, my own culture, and anything I do. So I've been very proud of all of these initiatives, and as they're never easy, as you know, Gina and Dean. It takes a lot of legwork. Doesn't matter whether you're in Indigenous tourism or you're just contributing back to your own community. It is a real journey, and it's not an easy one. And so I just have great respect for all of us that are in the trenches trying to, move systemic barriers out of challenges to build industries or our own multicultural challenges, fitting within Canada, the rest of it. So yeah, it's been a journey for me for sure.
I know that you go from province to province, but also internationally. And can you tell us a little bit about Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada? Because it doesn't just represent, you don't just represent Canadians going from Canadian province to province. You go internationally. What is the organization about, and what's the mandate?
Yeah, so ITAC itself, I'll just use the acronym because it's easier to say it that way, but ITAC itself is really there to help develop and market and promote Canada as an amazing Indigenous destination. So as you say, we work with organizations across every province and territory. So whether it's Indigenous Tourism BC today or Indigenous Tourism Alberta or out in the East Coast with Newfoundland Labrador Indigenous Tourism Association, what we're trying to do is elevate we know today there's about 1,900 Indigenous owned and operated tourism style businesses. There's many more hundreds in the hopper, but those are so they're cultural centers, they're restaurants, they're hotels, they're outdoor adventure. And then mixed beyond that is all the artists and the rest of these entrepreneurs that we're trying to help elevate and help them recognize the opportunities they have in the tourism world. These are paying customers, these are visitors. So at ITAC, what we try and do is bridge between that domestic and international sort of opportunity. And so when it comes to that, we work in many different ways in development and leadership and partnerships with many different companies. So we're elevating all the time on the ground in Canada with different programs and initiatives. But when it comes to the international side, as you say, we work with Destination Canada and many other partners to help, if you will, plant the vision of how Canada's a world leader as an Indigenous destination. And the work of ITAC is really important because we have many competitors out there. A lot of people think of other countries as maybe more opportunities for Indigenous tourism, right? Some of us might think of New Zealand, Australia, the US. Some might think of South Africa. Some might think of Central and South America. Well, that's true of visitors coming from all over the world. Everyone comes with a lens of what is really the best destinations for Indigenous tourism. And so it is growing internationally. The visitor interest is growing. There's a real, the pandemic realities changed a lot of mindsets of a lot of just humans, if you will. And there's a real desire to understand Indigenous values. And there's a real we feel there's a lot of more motivation from other visitors from other countries to learn about Indigenous values. And so we're just seeing a real new wave of interest in wanting to experience authentic Indigenous destinations. So what we do is work with partners like Destination Canada. Said we go into core markets. We market in the US, we market in France, Germany, the UK, Japan, China. Well, China's a bit of a conundrum right now, but that was a good market for us. And many other secondary markets like Australia, and we're hoping to continue to build in Mexico and others. And we're trying to make sure we have enough export-ready businesses that can actually sell with some key account partners in different countries. So we have this hybrid of where we're sometimes on the marketing side, we're working with key accounts in different countries and trying to help on the development side back here in Canada, working with partners to make sure that our businesses are truly export-ready should they want to sell to those markets.
And that's amazing that you're doing that. It's so fascinating to hear the outreach that ITAC has, and we hear about it all the time. But what's the impact in Canada? Like, what's it doing to Indigenous tourism? Can you give us an overview and it's important and why it's important?
Yeah, well, it's a really important piece because what we're seeing is there's two. It's interesting because I feel like in two worlds, right? When I'm talking with colleagues like ourselves that are, just in the business of trying to promote Indigenous entrepreneurialism in this country, we're often, we understand the emotional connections, the journey it takes for Indigenous people to get the confidence to build their business. And often it's driven by emotion and passion, as it is for many other entrepreneurs as well, I might add. But especially, we know that there's a real gap of growing Indigenous entrepreneurialism in the country at times. So we live in this world where I feel like when I talk with government and policy and non-Indigenous marketing partners, we talk about, heads in beds, and we talk about bums in seats on planes, and we talk about the volume, and we talk about the economics. On the Indigenous side, it's really about cultural revitalization, sense of pride of building your business. It's a different emotional style conversation. But the truth is, what it comes down to is no matter what businesses we build, they have to be feasible and they have to be sustainable. And the good news is Indigenous tourism businesses are growing at an unprecedented rate. In 2016 to 19, for example, we were growing twice the pace that the tourism industry was. So over that 3-year span, we do a lot of research and measuring, if you will, to see the metrics behind the work we do. And, that's why it's so important to have an ITAC, because that's one of the many benefits we do. We have an Indigenous-led approach to these measurements. We were growing about 23% over those 3 years. By comparison, the rest of the industry at that time was growing somewhere in the area of 13 to 14%. Wow. So we were growing rapidly, much faster. And it wasn't that the volume of visitors was changing. In fact, it was very modest. I think there was about 4% growth over those 3 years at that time. But what we were seeing was a change in what people wanted to experience and where they were spending their money. And we're still seeing that even more today. We're still rebounding from there was devastating impacts. We all know about the impacts during the pandemic years, but we're really noticing a tremendous rebound over the last 18, 24 months. And we're really feeling it's a tremendous sense of optimism for the future right now.
Dude, is that because of, so many communities are owning their own hotels now, and entrepreneurs are creating their own tours? Or do you have a sense of what the growth is or where it's coming from within the sector?
Yeah, what are the trends?
The trends are really like I said, one of the trends that I'll give you an example. There's a couple specific trends I'll speak to. The first one is that like I said, the impacts of the pandemic, feelings that people had, and this is from non-Indigenous people, because a lot of our customers are actually Indigenous people as well, but from the non-Indigenous visitors, they really want to experience culture. They want to understand the values of protecting water and protecting the land and understanding how to better be stewards of this earth. And I really find there's a real significant interest in that sort of simplified experience of understanding how do you sustain water? How do you harvest yet balance that and teach people about on the land, sort of, whether it's plants, animals, fish, whatever we do, right? And so I just find there's any sort of outdoor cultural adventure, these kind of things where people can be immersed is really important. So that's one theme. A second theme is Indigenous culinary. We have never seen more requests for Indigenous culinary opportunities as we are right now. And I mean, Canada is not known as an Indigenous culinary destination, but we are seeing such a growing demand that people want to experience Canada from an Indigenous culinary perspective. So we don't have enough restaurants in this country. We don't have enough sort of, smaller sort of, if I just want to say food vendors. We have a lot of small entrepreneurs that are doing sort of like conference work. But what I'm saying is about storefront operations where people can actually experience the food and actually be taught how it's relevant to the local Indigenous community. And as we know, Indigenous culinary foods are different from the West Coast to the East Coast to Northern Canada. So that's a big theme that we're hearing all the time. Another sort of the third area, and there's others, but these are the top three. The third is a sense of like, how do I call it? It's almost a bit of spirituality and healing. People want to have they want to disconnect. They want to be remote. They want to get off the grid, and they want to feel like that they're going through some sort of like simplified version of whatever the community or the entrepreneurs can responsibly share. Not everyone's going to want to do a sweat lodge. Not all communities do that, right? And not everyone's going to want to provide different healing practices or share that traditional knowledge. It's really sensitive. But for those businesses and communities that do that, there's a tremendous amount of interest in that. So, of course, there's the generic sort of stuff where they just want to support artists and things like that. But from a theming perspective, that's what I see growing in terms of trends right now. And it's fair to say that that's not only domestic interest, that's international. And this is, if I don't want to equate it to dollars and cents, but this is tremendously economically feasible because the demand right now for visitation in our country, I didn't speak about it before, but through all these themes I'm talking about, half the visitors that come to Canada right now, so if I can just simplify it for everyone, about half the visitors definitely want to add Indigenous experiences to any packages they're doing. And right now we're meeting about maybe 3 to 4% of that demand. So there's tremendous opportunity. We just got to align people with the sales channels more effectively.
I think this is so interesting because generally, back when you started in respect of Indigenous tourism, coming to BC and seeing some orcas and having that kind of nature experience, where did you see the shift come? Was it the 2010 Olympics? Was it to bring the world's attention to Vancouver? And where do you see the most successful tourism? Is it around BC? Is it in Ontario? Is it in whereabouts do you see that there is a huge elevation in tourism?
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this most significant change for this country was exactly as you said. The 2010 Winter Olympics changed Canada and the opportunity for Indigenous tourism forever. You know, I was getting involved, as I said earlier, in 2005. I officially took the job in 2008, and there was a genuine interest in it. At that time, British Columbia, Quebec, and some of the North were kind of developing Indigenous tourism, but there was an interest. The industry was kind of like, this is a niche market. But I have to say, when the games came, because as you know, Gina, I was involved with Aboriginal Tourism BC. We programmed a number of things with the Four Host First Nations as well. And that was the first time that the world saw Indigenous culture at a significant international event where it was elevated in a way that no one had ever seen before. And I can absolutely say I have never witnessed so much of a change in our industry since that time. And at the time, because I was I'd only been around a handful of years, I didn't actually even realize the gravity of how much it was going to change. I can tell you 14 years later, since the 2010 Winter Olympics, give or take 14 years, I guess, that was the beginning of the massive significant change. Because even in the tourism industry in Canada, the non-Indigenous side, and I mean like destination marketing partners, tourism policymakers at the provincial, territorial, and federal level, it was all about sort of marketing Canada with we know the traditional icons, whether it's RCMP, the beaver, maple syrup. There's certain iconic views that people have of Canada. Well, all of a sudden now it started to change, and wow, geez, this people are genuinely interested about Indigenous culture. Look what the response was during the opening of the Winter Olympic Games, and so all of a sudden it started this shift. And now we're promoting Canada with key partners like Destination Canada and others to other countries. And I can say, 15 years ago, this was never even in anyone's wheelhouse. Now every province, every territory, and Destination Canada and the country itself is really promoting Indigenous culture in everything they do, and that didn't happen. So to me, the Winter Olympics was by far the most different.
Yeah, so interesting. I mean, Chief Gibby Jacob, Chief Ian Campbell, it has come back to that quite a few times, and the story and how it actually came to be is really fascinating. With all this growth that's happening, right, with the entrepreneurism and successes, there's got to be challenges for sure. And so, what is ITAC doing to support these challenges that the businesses have?
Yeah, there's a couple of challenges. There's many challenges, as we can all appreciate, but I'll just speak to a few of them. One of the biggest challenges we've got in the country still remains just sustainable marketing support, right? So we are trying to, at ITAC, work with the government of Canada and work with partners to create annual sort of sustainable, predictable marketing investments so we can go and ensure that we can market Indigenous experiences and sort of key international markets and across North America more effectively. The challenge we've had is Canada is actually, despite what I'm going to say, I will recognize that Canada has been a very good partner to helping invest in Indigenous tourism. But we're still not at a place where Indigenous tourism is a standard annual investment. We just budget 2024 just came out. There was a $2.5 million investment. We're really appreciative of that. But to move the needle in terms of what we're up against, we're competing against other destinations, other countries spending more money on Indigenous tourism. We need to have more robust investments to make sure we can compete and be in those markets and ensure we get, I hate to use the commercialization of this, but it is a business and it is an industry and it requires stable investments. So we are competing against countries that are spending a lot more and on what I would argue is not even as authentic as what we have here in Canada. Like Canada's unique in the sense we promote only Indigenous owned and operated businesses. It can't be about us without us. It's always our theme to policymakers, and Canada's really embraced that on every layer, if you will, that I've seen. So that's a really big challenge for us. But that's a differentiator for us too, because other countries, like if many of your people watching today will often think of like places like Australia being, genuinely a great Indigenous cultural destination. But the truth is, a lot of the Indigenous communities in Australia are not part of that process. A lot of the benefits are government-owned institutions, government-run, government-led. The economic benefits don't flow as directly back. So that's one big. So having said all that, again, it's about that solidifying that strategy. The second is around the ongoing access to capital. As we know, this becomes an issue when we're getting into the entrepreneurial side. We continue to address, try and find ways to help Indigenous First Nation, Métis, Inuit business owners when they're not community owned really have access to the adequate capital to build their businesses. So over the years, ITAC has led programs like where now we have the Indigenous Tourism Micro Fund of the micro and small business stream. So these are up to $25,000 investments. They are just program investments. I don't want to call them grants because they're required to align businesses with our original accreditation, which is our national authenticity sort of and market readiness accreditation program. And so we've come up with some different ways to enhance their financial abilities. And so these are 25,000. So this year we'll help about 300 businesses across the country. So we have programs that ITAC facilitates with many partners down to the sort of local level across the country. And so that's one solution. And going back on the marketing side, what we've created now is a national fund called the Indigenous Tourism Destination Fund. And so we've asked the industry, if you believe in Indigenous tourism, become an ITDF partner. And there's a platform for that now. And what we've said is sign up for, 25 cents of a transaction should be dedicated towards supporting Indigenous tourism through a national allocated fund. And so we launched that just recently this year. And we have several companies that have signed up, and we're trying to attract the non-Indigenous industry that says they support Indigenous people and Indigenous tourism. These are actionable ways they can do this. And so those are some of the solutions we've been creating just to sort of create that stability and not always have to wait for government handouts to build the industry.
It's so true and such a great point, because to be dependent on grants from the government or specific allocations, regional, provincial, federal, how can you run a company effectively that way? With so much opportunity and so much passion and 23% growth. I mean, it's undeniable. Are you finding it hard to get the buy-in from government about how important this is?
I think that, no, I don't. It depends sort of on what government we're talking about. Right now, federally, we've had good policy support. I mean, the government of Canada, for example, this last summer created a whole new national tourism strategy, the Federal Tourism Growth Strategy. And for the first time, because of kind of the work that ITAC has done, Indigenous tourism was identified as one of their top 5 priorities. Now, people may not think that's that relevant or a big deal, but the truth is that's not the government of Canada has had many federal tourism strategies, but this is the first time Indigenous tourism was actually specifically identified as one of the top 5 priorities. And so that was a big piece of it. So federally, we've seen tremendous policy support. The problem is, backing that up with a predictable funding model that makes sense. We work that, we apply to the programs. We do that on behalf of our members. We advocate all the time. So that's there. Where I feel that the country still needs some support on, especially as well as a lot of the provincial and territorial governments. There's almost, I feel like this weird sort of like, as we grow Indigenous tourism and we, in BC, it's the difference. Like Indigenous Tourism BC has a great relationship. That organization has been around almost 30 years. The government of BC is a big supporter. So that hill has been climbed, and they're there, and they got more sustainability, more predictability. However, ITAC is trying to triage that in every province and territory. And I can tell you with great confidence, when I get to some parts of the country, in another province. But I'll give some examples. Nova Scotia, we were just there with their conference. We've been helping build the Nova Scotia Indigenous Tourism Enterprise Network, and that is a provincial organization like we have in BC. Well, the province of Nova Scotia isn't quite there yet. There's very modest investments. They feel it's a federal responsibility for the most part, from what we can see. There's not a lot of top up. There's a lot of the tourism ministry provincially there kind of puts all their money through, Tourism Nova Scotia. Not very much of that actually goes down to sort of stable, predictable resources to help build there's about 80 businesses in Nova Scotia that are at various levels of market readiness. So if that province wants to see, particular growth, we have to have advocacy and work to make sure that there's that sustainability there. So, and to be honest with you, every province and territory has got a journey. BC, Quebec, Yukon, they've been around the longest of our that I can see in terms of our provincial organizations. They've done very well, some of those provinces, but there's still room for improvement in very significant portion of this country. So like I said, it just depends. That's the difficult part of ITAC and our multitasking we have to do. We're trying to build that trust, that confidence, that government support. And to me, people get lost in partisan politics. To me, one party or the next, people, I think, genuinely feel that we need to do more for Indigenous communities. And I think they see Indigenous tourism as a really one of many options. But they've got to go beyond. I say this all the time, and I'm sure you've said it in yourselves, Gene and Dean. Like, we got to go beyond just acknowledging territory. That's important. But it's got to be actionable. There's got to be real commitments. And it shouldn't be just Indigenous people waiting for the federal government to hand programs out. It should be provincial, territorial, municipalities, destination organizations in our world. Everyone should be contributing to this effort.
Good. That's so great. And that brings us, we teach, but besides the TV show, which we're going to get into, besides kids camps, which we teach kids camps about entrepreneurism all over Canada and really developing the leaders, we get youth 11 to 18 years old to choose businesses within their community that they think would be profitable, giving back and providing employment where people can stay in their own territories. And tourism is a huge component of that. Absolutely. Kids in the Yukon wanting to do dog sleds, Opaskwayak, Manitoba with their dog sled international race, et cetera, and just developing experiences. So I know that ITAC is making its reach from small community to small community. Which brings us to the next question in respect. So there's government support, of course, but can you share some insights into the importance of collaboration and partnerships with tourism businesses interested in supporting Indigenous tourism initiatives?
Yeah, this industry particularly, I've administered with many different Indigenous organizations, but I've never seen an industry that you can't do this alone if you want success. I must stress that to any entrepreneur or community-owned, dev officer working with their economic development boards. You need everyone in the mix. You need Indigenous organizations like provincial territorial Indigenous organizations. You need ITAC, but you also need the local DMO, the destination marketing organizations, and you need every layer of marketing partner you can have. It's not competitive that way. We actually have to leverage each other's marketing programs, each other's marketing opportunities, each other's development opportunities. But I'll give you some great examples. One of our really great partners from a national perspective has been companies like WestJet. Before there was ITAC working directly with WestJet has had, good relations with many of the First Nations, particularly in some of the Métis communities and organizations in Alberta. But there was not really as much of a tourism angle on it, right? So WestJet and us, we've signed an MOU a few years ago. We keep, improving it. And what we do with that, it's, one of the examples of that MOU work we've done has been $100,000 commitment for development projects. So 1 year we put all of that money towards helping Indigenous tourism businesses in their key sort of gateway destinations build a little more. So we awarded 10 companies with $10,000 a piece a few years ago. And it's those kind of relationships we bring WestJet together with Destination Canada, with ITAC, with, in that case, Indigenous Tourism Alberta, plus the local communities and the entrepreneurs together. So you really do need that in tourism because This country does have to have a unified approach to how we're marketing domestically across North America and, of course, to the world. Because we just can't. There's so much money that's spent by other countries that can outspend us, that we have to really be aligned. So WestJet is a really great example. Another good example, honestly, is our relationship with Destination Canada. They invest in ITAC and certain marketing activities, and some of it's in kind, and some of it's direct investments to help us, lift up more imaging, more marketing materials, etc. So some of you may have seen last summer, for example, we had an out of home, it's called. You might have seen bus wraps with the original on it, taking you to our platform, destinationindigenous.ca. It was in airports, it was at kiosks when people got their luggage. We had videoing throughout many airports, little promo videos. That was because Destination Canada invested into helping us continue to build the brand, the materials, the marketing. So that's another really great example. On the Indigenous side, we really value, we've done many best practice missions. We talked about international some time ago. We brought delegations, Indigenous delegations from, for example, Colombia recently. We brought them to the community of Wendake. Wendake is one of the leaders in the country because that community has a world-class 4.5-star hotel, a beautiful cultural center, restaurants. They have storefront artisan shops. And we took them there as one of the example communities where we've seen an Indigenous community, one of many First Nations in the country that have done this. And so they got immersed right from the second they came. It's just outside of Quebec City, 15 minutes. They thought they were going to Quebec City, and we took them there, and they got to be immersed in the Huron-Wendat culture, and it was just amazing. And so that's where we worked on a best practice mission. We're now working with best practice missions into New Zealand. We're bringing Indigenous tourism professionals from Canada to sort of work with Indigenous professionals in New Zealand here in the coming months. So I'm seeing lots of partnerships manifest in different ways. And I really believe that's because of the work of organizations like ITAC.
Yep. No kidding. You know what? When I was traveling around, definitely I saw original, thought like very effective, looked it up, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, tell our listeners.
Yeah, like the original, I'm wearing the lapel pin and the modified version. What a big challenge we have with Indigenous tourism is, as we know, we're not all the same. I'm Métis, I know Gina, and obviously Dean's Métis and Cree ancestry, and of course Gina, you're Coast Salish connected. The truth is, the visitors don't understand the difference of our communities, and so when we promote Indigenous tourism, one of the ways we've done it in the past few decades has been everyone's been doing their logoing, their designs, but the visitor is very confused. And we've done visitor surveying, so we can say this with confidence. What we learned through the work we've been doing on the research side, with whether it's domestic or international, visitors just want to know they're going to an authentic destination. And once they get there, let's immerse them. So we created a few years ago now, we've been building this original. It was the way we felt we could represent First Nation, Métis, Inuit businesses across the country in a simplified way, right? It's like when we go to Tim Hortons. I'm from Saskatchewan, so I'm a Tim Hortons fan. I hate to say it, but for the BC people, I know Starbucks is more of the fans here. But when you go to Tim Hortons in Vancouver or you go to Tim Hortons in Saskatchewan, you understand the concept of what you're getting. We have to apply that same thinking from a marketing strategy. So the original is a concept, is a brand that we're taking domestically and internationally out, so that when visitors see it, they know, oh, okay, that's owned and operated by Indigenous entrepreneurs or the community. They've qualified through a program, they're market or export ready. We have confidence in that, because in our surveying, we also saw that there was still a concern that maybe some of the product or the businesses weren't, were they really ready for visitors? Were they set up to host visitors? That's a concern of people. And when they're flying from, especially international, from Europe or Asia or Central or South America or wherever they come from, they want to have a really good experience. So that's one of the reasons behind the branding. So we've been successfully launching that the last few years, and we continue to build the program. Right now, we have several hundred businesses in the country now that have gone through the accreditation process. And we find the branding is really easy for us to really simplify and help sell in many different countries and across Canada. So it's been very good for us.
That leads to a great question. How number one, if I'm thinking about starting a tourism business, so if I have an experience, because tourism, just as you mentioned, is not just experiences, but it is our food and our culture and our restaurants and our jams and our products. How does ITAC represent and be an advocate for Indigenous entrepreneurs and the tourism and hospitality industries? And how do they apply, and what's the criteria to something like this? Number one, from a product, and two, to actually advocating and promoting a resort.
Yeah, so we've got some great tools. So first of all, we want businesses to become members. So I would encourage every entrepreneur in the country to look at membership. We have an annual membership program. It comes out every roughly January every year, and we close in March. So become a member of ITAC, and there's different ways. When you look at our membership, you go to indigenoustourism.ca. That's sort of our industry friendly corporate side where they can get a lot of guidance and tools. So membership's one, and really membership is very modest. We just want to get those entrepreneurs involved. Now, you may be guided to become a member of the Provincial Territorial Indigenous Tourism Organization, and that's really great because that's where we're trying to connect the members together, not only with ITAC, but with our Indigenous Provincial Territorial partners. Now, the reason why I referenced going to the indigenoustourism.ca website, an entrepreneur that's really trying to figure out how do they want to be involved in this, we've got toolkits when you get to that place. So there's the original business development toolkit that actually gives sort of people a guideline, a checklist, a sort of guidance of if they really want to be in tourism generally, here's what you're going to need to prepare yourself for. And some entrepreneurs may choose to, no, I'm fine, I'll just do my own thing. And that we respect that. But if you want to compete in tourism, we want people to understand what we're up against. It is a very competitive industry. There's 125,000 plus tourism businesses in the country. And if, as I said earlier in the show, there's only about 1,900. So we're less than 2% of the total number of businesses competing for those visitors in any destination in the country. So we've created a toolkit to help Indigenous communities, direct dev officers, the entrepreneurs understand their way through that. So I would encourage them to look there. We've also got a national guideline for market readiness, for authenticity and market readiness. So these different tools that we've created now that just, again, guide people to understand how to compete in tourism, what are they getting into, and where, what are they going to be possibly having to think about building their business in a good way. The last thing I will say, from a community perspective, we'll be putting out very shortly an updated sort of toolkit for communities, because, the 630 plus First Nation communities, Métis settlements, Inuit communities in the north. One of the other challenges in the long run we've got is many nations haven't yet really put together a sort of a community tourism plan. So most communities really support, I'm talking from an Indigenous angle now, they really support Indigenous tourism, but they don't really have a plan around that. And we don't want to, we feel at ITAC, mass tourism is not where most communities and entrepreneurs will really want to be. And I'm talking like the big buses, people come in, they just take pictures and they leave. We need a little bit of that in certain parts of the country, but for the most part, we want communities to feel comfortable that they can they can manage and know where to have infrastructure and work their way through it. So some communities like Wendake have done that, and they've done it over the years on their own with or without these tools, and that's fine. But we're I guess what I'm saying in terms of guideline, we haven't forgot about the community tourism planning, and so we're going to be promoting a new toolkit as well in the very near future.
I think it's fantastic. I know that a lot of communities, Dean and I travel around Canada and in our other life as well, knowing the resources that are available. It's just in respect of capacity and the knowledge and the connection. So when you talk about collaborations, are there some examples of other businesses that are really successful that maybe not competitive, that are province to province, that could give advice to other resorts, people or nations that are wanting to start resorts, or entrepreneurs that are wanting to start their kayak companies?
Yeah, I'm going to give, it's always hard because if I don't give the right example and someone watches it, they may be mad at me because there's so many great examples, but two that I really enjoy, like Métis Crossing in Alberta is it's a beautiful sort of just a cultural destination for Métis people. And I just, they're just about an hour outside of Edmonton, Alberta. It's a newer sort of hotel. It's got culinary experience. They've got a little bit of a cultural center there. It opened in basically the fall of 2020. So they opened at a time when, the pandemic was hitting us, but the truth is it's an amazing, they've got sky watching sort of domes now. It's a unique experience that connects visitors with the night sky and stars. So that's something they've done there. So they've created a cultural destination with their 40-room guest lodge, and it's actually one of the most beautiful new developments. Another really amazing one is Dakota Dunes, just outside of Saskatoon. A major new resort. I'm sure you know of it. If you haven't been there already, I strongly encourage you. It's 15 minutes outside of Saskatoon. And it's a world-class hotel with a golf course there. They've got a casino for gaming if you choose that. It's funny, they started with gaming and they realized they were going to put part of the community tourism planning. They were going to add accommodations and all these other activities. And now you go, they got tremendous amount of cultural activations and things that would never have happened without having that anchor tenant of a beautiful hotel. And so they opened that hotel a few years ago. I believe it's one of the most amazing Indigenous hotels in the country now. And then finally, an example of like Klahoose Wilderness Resort, and that's one of our newest resort properties. And of course, it's an Indigenous culinary experience near Desolation Sound. It opened in June of about 2021, and it's basically an all-inclusive luxury eco resort vacation, and it's in conjunction with sharing Klahoose band's traditional values, right? And so the resort offers an immersive activities and exploration into sort of their region. Of course, it's got grizzly bears, it's got kayaking in there, and so they've created the anchor tenant of a beautiful resort surrounded by a number of natural sort of experiences in the area. And so they provide the Indigenous storytelling of the Klahoose people with many of those activations. And so those are three really amazing experiences that I think I'm really proud to share with you.
We are really excited because next episode we are going to meeting with Chris Tate, who is the tourism manager for Klahoose Wilderness Resort. And I know we're very excited because we've got a collaboration. When we talk about collaborations and about partnerships, ITAC has been a huge supporter of our TV show, The Bears Lair, for season 1, when it was just an inaugural idea, and season 2. And you've been such a wonderful guest judge. And why is it important to support a programming like this? Because really what we want to do is elevate entrepreneurs. And I know that a couple members of ITAC have been on our TV show. And then also talk about how we created our partnership and what we're going to be offering that's going to be excited for our viewers for season 2 to watch.
Yeah, I'm really proud of our relationship. I mean this in the most genuine and sincere way. I mean, we see across the country so many entrepreneurs that are, the questions you're asking are right in line with what, honestly, our team deals with on a daily basis. I'm here, our ITAC office in Vancouver, but we work nationally with our Indigenous provincial territorial networks. And we have many Indigenous tourism forums, and we just see more entrepreneurs coming on board all the time. And so as we watched you developing Bears Lair, we were so we were so compelled to get on board with you, Gina, because and yourself, Dean, because we see the entrepreneurs desperately needing support, and we saw this as an opportunity to support, whether it was an ITAC member or not. We just want to support Indigenous entrepreneurship because our business community of the 1,900 members, roughly 70% of those businesses are entrepreneurially driven. And, and they depend on every extra bit of support they can get from our branding, our direct investments for like the micro small business support programs, many of the marketing examples I gave. It's these entrepreneurs that show up we have Rendezvous Canada, Canada's largest trade show. We have finally created, after years, things like the National Indigenous Showcase at Canada, where we sell Canada to roughly 60 countries. And you know who I'm so proud of? I see individual entrepreneurs that have gone through the market readiness, and they've gone through the accreditation programs, and they've worked their way to become truly that market and export readiness. And I see them sitting there and selling and signing contracts for sales over the next 2, 3, 4 years with major tourism partners. And to me, that's what Bears Lair helps us. It helps us provide another important tool to promote Indigenous entrepreneurship and try and guide them so that they can be guaranteed success. We know it's difficult. We don't talk about the challenges and those that didn't make it. But the truth is, I believe Bears Lair is going to be so important for us in the kind of work we've sponsored with you, the kind of supports we've helped to talk about the Chris Tates of the world that are helping, Klahoose Wilderness Resort grow. That's what Bears Lair does for us. It helps us build our brand. It helps us bring just a level of industry support from an Indigenous-led show like that. And that's, to me, if that's not the values that we have or as an industry, I'm not sure why we'd be in this game. Because the truth is, we get asked to do marketing stuff all the time, but it needs to be Indigenous-led. And honestly, Gina and Dean, you guys have helped us really bring that to life, and that's what we thank you for.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. And I think, the final question and last question, and we have the expert in Canada on Indigenous tourism, is for our listeners out there, what can an entrepreneur do to enter the tourism field, or how can existing tourism companies expand?
There's lots of opportunity. Like, you don't need to do, a lot of entrepreneurs won't have the right research. They won't have the right sort of methodology. We've got that for you. It's free. Don't pay and waste money on things you don't need to do. Yes, you have to write a feasibility and business plan if you haven't already done that, but go to indigenoustourism.ca. Look at our toolkits. Look at our information. We have visitor research. We'll be doing we do updated Conference Board of Canada supply side research all the time. We'll be doing a next major research piece. These are things at your fingertips that you can get. Once you're there, we can connect you with your Indigenous provincial territorial partner. We have programs you can apply for, and we've got ways you can get involved. We just hosted the 11th International Indigenous Tourism Conference. We are trying to make Canada the world leader in Indigenous tourism and really promote Canada beyond beavers, as I said earlier, RCMP officers, maple syrup, and sort of Rocky Mountains at times. Those are important assets, but the world is yet to really realize Canada is an amazing Indigenous destination. So we're creating all these tools, all this information for you, and we're there to help you. And our team is on standby with development or marketing or partnerships. So I just say, just start there. And, it is amazing opportunities right now. And we believe Indigenous tourism is going to grow to 3 times what it is today by 2030. That's how much of a change we see coming.
Wow. I wish I had all this information 20 something years ago when I had a tourism business.
Yeah, Dean used to own the first surf company in Tofino about 25 years ago. So
Surf camp. Yeah.
Surf camp. Yeah, that's really interesting. And we have a great collaboration and partnership going on with each other. So ITAC and the Bears Lair and Klahoose Wilderness Resort, we have a contest coming up. June 4th is when the Bears Lair airs for the first time on Aboriginal People Television Network and on Lumi. Each episode out of the 9 episodes will have a question. You have to watch the episodes to see what the answer is, because I'm being very clever with this. The viewers will have 72 hours to put in their right answer for every single episode, week after week. So if you miss the TV show, then you can go on Lumi and you can watch the TV show. And then once you watch all 9 episodes, we will be doing a draw, and it'll be with ITAC. It'll be with Klahoose Wilderness Resort and with us together. And a family of 4 will win a 4-day vacation at Klahoose Wilderness Resort, all expense paid. It'll include airfare, everything you are from door to door to have the most incredible Indigenous experience and nature experience. So we're really, really excited about that. That is a $20,000 value. And it's going to bring viewers, it's going to elevate entrepreneurs all over Canada, but it's also going to elevate all the great work that ITAC does in referring resorts and really showcasing and elevating your tourism business. So we're really excited about that. I know that you were a big part of coming up with this idea, Keith.
We are so proud of Clahoos and proud of that as a destination. And, they've been building it the last few years, and they built it at a time when the just coming out of the pandemic challenges. So to see them, just the community and the nation committed to building that business is incredible. And I have to say, it's a world-class destination, one of many we have in the country. And I can't wait for whoever wins is going to have a truly a life-changing experience there.
Amazing. And I think that's what really authentic partnerships are about, because when you and I were talking about sponsoring, it's nice to have a spot on the show. And by the way, everybody, Keith Henry is going to be on our most anticipated episode, the finale, where out of 18 entrepreneurs, 4 will remain and somebody will be awarded with $100,000. So that's a really great experience. But to go on further and provide additional experiences, not in elevating resorts, but providing that lifetime experience and memories for a family of 4. And I know that we're going to continue with this long relationship and hopefully make this an annual event where you can showcase other recommendations in your history.
Absolutely. We love the work you guys are doing. Keep it up. I love being there with that last show. I don't want to, it's been hard for me not to talk about it publicly. I feel like I want to say things all the time because I was really proud of the fact that a lot of those entrepreneurs were what I would, it's interesting. Some of the entrepreneurs are in tourism. They don't realize they're in tourism. And when you talk to them, it's understanding how to compete there. And I loved what you guys, that show, that opportunity for me, and the partnership that we have it's great to see so many tourism initiatives coming through to that point of almost succeeding in the end with this opportunity. So keep up the good work, and love what you guys are doing. And I just would say to everyone watching today, if you want to learn more about these amazing destinations and these entrepreneurs that are doing amazing work, go to destinationindigenous.ca. We've got hundreds of businesses there that would appreciate you stopping by and supporting and seeing amazing destinations like Clahoos Wilderness Resort.
Amazing. Keith, you are such an advocate. You're such an amazing human that it's truly authentic. Your passion shines through and your spark. And every time you talk about what you do, and you just seem to have a job that's just going to spark interest internationally. But I don't think there's a better person that's ever existed for a job than you are with what you're doing right now. So thank you so much for being such a great guest and a great advocate for all Indigenous tourism all over Canada.
Well, thanks. I feel bashful hearing all that, but I'm very passionate about it. It comes from a place of care and concern, and I don't. It's not like whatever I say is always right, or I understand the challenges, but I love the work. It's very meaningful and important to me because I grew up, and anyone that knows me will know this story. My grandparents were not very proud of who they were, and it's burned a passion in me since the moment I graduated university. I was going to try and do what I could along the way. And so, I love it. And I really appreciate both you and Dean and your support of ITAC and the work we're doing. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Keith. So great to see you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, I guess we'll see you in other recorded episodes in the end.
Woo!
Thanks, you guys.
All right. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Lair. Please follow us, download this episode, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok.